portable sound. Who could live without it? Everyone did before the transistor radio. And before a pair of Japanese inventors built a techno superpower called Sony. In the late 40s, two Tokyo engineers struggled to keep their small electronics company afloat. Their tape recorders and other gadgets aren't selling because post-war Japan is in ruins.
There was no steady power supply. There were no tools. There was no consumer class left. There was no money to buy something, even if you had something to sell.
Masuro Ibuka is the guy who started the company.
Ibuka was a sort of bumbling, big, slightly stooped over, not very fashionable, brilliant inventor, and even more gorgeously brilliant inspirer of inventions.
Ibuka surrounds himself with the best and brightest minds, including Akio Morita, a renegade who walked away from his family's Saki dynasty to study physics.
Morita had the ability to pioneer a market when no market existed. He said, "You don't know you want this, but by the time I'm through with you, you won't be able to do without it."
This is the market they want, America, where everyone's spending on techno gadgets.
They eagerly give their attention to what's new and beautiful and advanced.
From stuff that makes life fun to machines that get the dirty work done. But what to invent for a nation that seems to have everything? Ibuka wonders if a recent scientific breakthrough could be the key. It's called the transistor, a tiny new device that can amplify electronic signals. The electrical equivalent of a water faucet. It can control the flow of a current and switch that flow off and on. What's amazing about transistors, they're a fraction of the size of anything that's come before them. Ibuka is intrigued.
He knows nothing about them, but he knows that they're a power source that's tiny. That's all he needs to know. He wants it.
The power source of the day is the glass vacuum tube. Big and bulky, these tubes make TVs and radios of the 50s so huge they take up half your living room. That gives the inventors an idea. How about a smaller radio that listeners can carry around with them, made with transistors?
This transistor would be their entrance, their entry key into the American market, which they wanted desperately.
They buy a license from Western Electric, the American company that developed the first transistor. But this early version is so weak, it can only power tiny things like hearing aids.
Inspired, as always, by Ibuka's insistence, by his fixation, by his focus, and by his energy, the company's engineers outdid themselves for nearly a year, struggling with what to do with this feeble little transistor.
They discover that they can boost the transistor's power with a process called phosphorus doping. By injecting microscopic amounts of this mineral, free-floating electrons are added to the metal in the transistor. This dramatically improves its ability to conduct electricity and increase power flow. The next challenge, making radio parts miniature. Fiddly and time-consuming work.
There were many dead ends that were encountered, obviously. How do we make this thing work? Because this was, of course, their baby. They had put a lot on the line. They had borrowed money.
But by 1955, they have a prototype. And it works like a dream.
There was tremendous exhilaration and exuberance that went through Ibuka and Morita. It was a thrilling moment when that transistor was originally placed into the wiring which had been designed to run this little radio, and it worked.
Now, They need to come up with a company name that Americans can pronounce. Morita, the marketing whiz, comes up with a clever combo. The Latin word for sound, sonus, combined with sunny, English slang for boy. The new name, Sony.
This is a marvelous story because it meant to him a sunny boy, a young guy, was brimming with energy and exuberance and vitality. So let's take sound, mix it with sunny boy, and come up with Sony. And that's where the name came from.
April 1955. Morita hits America to sell the Sony radio. But the response is less than enthusiastic.
The transistor radio business in the United States encountered some very considerable resistance. 1950s was a time when Americans were going bigger and better, not smaller and better. So these huge consoles, bigger cars, bigger everything.
Mr. Morita, thank you for seeing me.
Then Morita meets with executives from the Bulova Watch Company, and they are impressed.
Jim, this could be what we're looking for.
I think so.
And they said, we get it. We think people want a radio they can carry around with them easily, and we will buy from you 100,000 units. That translated in terms of money into more than the entire company's capitalized worth.
How many can we get?
It seems like a dream come true, but there's a catch. Bulova wants its own name on the product, not Sony's.
They said, we'll buy 100,000 of these things, but you have to put our name on them. And Morita said, no.
Morita's decision shocks the executives.
I mean, that's the most important moment in the entire transistor radio story. And Morita later said about it that it was his most important business decision he ever made.
Back in Japan, Morita and Ibuka change their strategy. They work on selling the concept of radio that fits in your pocket.
But it won't fit.
The solution? Invent a bigger pocket.
The early transistor radios didn't quite fit into a normal shirt pocket. But Morita had equipped his sales force with extra large pockets to make the illusion work.
The pocket-sized radio becomes a huge hit in Japan as their economy revs back to life. Now, America wants in on the action. In November 1957, Sony has to charter an entire cargo plane to export enough radios to the U.S. in time for Christmas. A new era of portable sound is underway. And the guys who started Sony never look back as they go on to build one of the most powerful brands in history.